Right. Well, let's start with your observation of your experience, and mine is very similar. That sometimes our best ideas come whether we're surfing or swimming or in the bath or the shower, and we're not alone. So lots of people would say the same thing. Even Oliver Sacks, the guy who tried to get to write Blue Mind,
right?
He was an avid swimmer. He said he got his best ideas in the water, and he would always try to jump out and jot them down on a yellow legal pad. And whether you're swimming in a lake or in a pool, you keep that pen and pad nearby, just like you jump in the car and go, okay, I got to record this before it slips away. So that's this is not an unusual story. And so why is the question? What's going on there? And part of it is part of Blue Mind is by going to the water, what we're taking away. It's not necessarily all about what we're adding, although we're adding, water and sometimes wildlife and, an athletic experience, but it's also equally about what we remove. And we remove distractions. We remove screens. We remove extraneous noise and voices when we get out on the water.
Welcome to the Habits to Goals podcast with Martin Grunburg. It's time to take control of your life. Are you ready to achieve goals faster and more consistently than ever before? You need the habit factor. You're listening to Habits to Goals, the podcast that helps you create the habits that lead to success. And here is Martin Grunburg.
All righty. Welcome to Habits to Goals. My name is Martin Grunburg. We have just an amazing guest, a guy I've been hunting down for probably close to a year. I want to call him Dr. J. His name is Wallace J. Nichols, PhD, research associate, marine biologist, I believe. And Wallace, how are you doing? Jay, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for that Dr. J shout out. I was a big fan of the original Dr. J as a kid, so I'm humbled and honored to be here.
Do you ever get that? Anybody bust?
I've heard that before.
No,
yeah.
All right.
I have, and I have heard it, and
oh, you have. Good.
I have, and it's surprising the younger folks don't know the original reference, so it's kind of seems new to them, but yeah, here we are. Yeah.
So I'm going to, as I mentioned before we jumped on the air, I have my typical format. I'm going to deviate really quick and give the listeners, I sometimes want to call them readers, a little bit of background. Dr. J has written a book called Blue Mind. You probably already know about it. It's a fantastic book. I'm 90% plus through it. I have marked it up extensively. We're going to get into some of that. And again, that's the reason I'm hunting him down. Blue Mind, check it out. So before we get into it, Jay, we like to kick things off with what we call the GTR, the Good Things Report. I can flip for it. You can go first. I can go first. You let me know.
Well, I'll start. We are in the Two Daughter Club, you and I, and they are the lights of my life, although sometimes they're also the bane of my existence. And this week is finals week, and then we're going into Christmas break. And I love seeing my girls digging into learning, and I appreciate the stress of finals and all of that. And I love seeing them thrive and learn. And I'm not a stickler about grades, although they're both doing fine. I just love, just the learning process. And it brings back memories of that, that certain kind of stress that you have, around exam time right. That, sometimes feels really good, when you feel your brain stretch and learn and things click in and you go, wow, I get it. I didn't just memorize it. I get it. And this is useful. And, so the house is full of that vibe, and then it'll be joy, the holiday season. It'll be not, we'll be out of school and it'll be, fun. So that's my good news report here.
I love it. That's a great GTR. And I'm guessing they are exceptional students. We'll get into it in a bit. I'm just curious, were you a grade student as a kid, or were you kind of all over the board?
I was a pretty academically minded kid.
Oh, good.
And I was,
unlike me. Right.
Yeah, I was pretty self-motivated.
Nice.
Maybe one kid that's like that and one who's not. I asked my one daughter, need help with your homework? No. Is it done? Yes, Dad, of course. And then the other one sort of, a little different approach. So it's, I like school. I'm a lifelong learner. I tell my kids I went to the 24th grade, and they are in 10th grade and 7th grade. So that totally freaks them out. They're like, "You're an idiot, Dad. Why would you do that?" But just way too much school was kind of I like school. So
yeah, I like school. Well, I think that's evident with your PhD. My heart goes out to you, the father of 2 teenage daughters. My GTR is a slam dunk. I got to tell you, Jay. First of all, having you on the show. Second of all, probably in reverse order, I should say. First of all, I got out and surfed. I kind of had to. It had to be my little precursor to the interview here. So before we get heavy into the book, I would like to kind of set the table with the background. Like, where'd you go to high school? You grew up on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I was born in New York City, went to school on the East Coast. We moved to Chicago mid-high school. So I went to high school in the Chicago area, Barrington High School.
Wow. And
then sort of net west movement. But went to undergrad and in Indiana, went to grad school at Duke University, North Carolina, and then made my way west. Got my PhD at University of Arizona in Tucson, which people think, how'd you end up there? It's a pretty quick jump from Tucson to the ocean in Mexico. So that was my thinking. And I studied sea turtles for my doctoral work and genetics and migration and stuff.
Got it. Okay, so got it.
In California. Now I'm in California.
And then what was the I'm sure I could guess, but what was the motivation for you ended up in Santa Cruz, or?
Yeah, we're north of Santa Cruz. So we're on the Monterey Bay, basically.
Beautiful.
So it's great, beautiful. And my work's all over the world, but I love living here, and obviously the ocean's great, great community. And my wife's from California, so that was initially kind of after I dragged her around Mexico for a while, I said, "You get to choose." And she said, "Let's go back to the Bay Area." And we landed here. So it's sort of, it's all about love, really. Yeah.
It's all about love and water, H2O.
Yeah.
They kind of got it. So what sparks the book? Obviously you have a lifetime of work and research into it. And then one day, and I'm sure it's not one day, it's over a period of time and it's a process, but I'd like to know how you came to the name, which I love, Blue Mind, and kind of talk me through the creative process and the endeavor when you knew you kind of, I'm guessing you came to a point where you had to write the book, and I could be wrong, but I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, I always loved writing, and even when I graduated from high school, my high school English professor said, "You're going to be a writer, aren't you?" And I said, "I'm going to be a scientist." And he was very bummed, but I said, I promise I'll be a scientist who writes. And actually, I remember saying that,
wow.
And he remembers me promising that. And I'll get back to that because it's a cool story. But so I did a bunch of college and grad school, and then more grad school, and sort of did become a scientist, and had always known that I felt my best when I was near, in, on, or underwater. Ever since I was a kid, and I'm not the only one. And you probably could tell exactly the same story. Lots and I would say most people listening now would say, yeah, me too. And I always wondered as a scientist, why? And I thought there would be a book answering that, and I couldn't find it. And I really wanted to read it and apply it to my life and my work, but it wasn't written. And I looked, maybe it was out of print, maybe it was written in German or Japanese or some other language. And so then I realized the book I wanted to read hadn't been written. Somebody should write it. So I tried to convince several smart people that they should write it, and nobody bit. And finally, I pitched it to a guy named Oliver Sacks, Dr. Oliver Sacks. He's a great neurologist, passed away last year. Great writer, brilliant, just a mentor and to a lot of people, and big thinker, big intellect, super creative scientist. And I thought, and he's a water lover, lifelong water lover and explorer of ideas. And I thought, this guy he's the man to write this. And he said, it's a fine idea. You do it. And I said, oh shit.
Right.
That's like, that's a big, heavy mandate. And so I set out to do the background research. I'm not a neuroscientist or a psychologist. I'm a marine biologist with, a keen love of water. And so I had to hang out with a bunch of new kinds of scientists and go to different conferences. And so I organized my own conference to bring people together to learn from them. And so we did that for several years, and we called it the Blue Mind Summit, which produced the raw material that became the book. And so that's kind of the kicking, screaming, dragging story of why I wrote this book. It's because I had to read it. So
yeah, and since nobody was going to write it for you, that's quite the undertaking, isn't it? Though writing a book.
Yeah, but I think everybody who's done something, in any realm, has had that feeling that they see it, they see the thing off in the future that they want to exist, and it isn't there. There's a vacuum, and so they endeavor to either have it created or create it themselves. And that is, that's, I guess you call it, entrepreneurship or creativity, but you see something that you think should exist in the world, whether it's an invention or an idea or a book or a song or some, a building, and then you make it real.
You fill the void.
Fill the void. Yeah. And so that's kind of what it felt like. And lo and behold, there, people like you say, wow, I like this idea. This idea fills a space that I didn't even know was empty. And now I have a word or a phrase to describe, blue mind describes something that's a familiar feeling.
And how'd you come up with that name?
It just kind of made sense. It was,
were you toying with other names, or was that just an automatic no-brainer? It just came to you, first one and done.
Yeah, I wrote down the word oceanophilia, which is sort of a love of ocean, and I realized that it was bigger than the ocean.
Right.
It's not just the ocean, although it includes the ocean. The idea was not just the ocean. It was lakes, rivers, pools, showers,
right,
ponds, water slides, on and on, waterfalls. And so it just sort of backed off of the oceanophilia, and it was like, okay, it's blue mind. It's a state of mind that you get.
So you got to it pretty quickly.
Yeah. And even when you're nowhere near water, but you're imagining it, you can get yourself into blue mind. So it's even virtual water or water-based artwork or film, photography, sound of water on your app, YouTube video of your, surfers always like to watch other surfers surfing. And so it's like you get a little bit of blue mind just by geeking out and watching, some embedded videos in Surfline or going on YouTube or watching film. That's blue mind too. It's, not as good as the real thing, but it gets you there.
So help the would-be reader, listener. What I hate to say it like this, but in a nutshell, what's the affinity? Because I know I've read the book. I also have some intuitive thoughts around this, but I want to hear you tell it. What is this natural affinity? Why is it we can look at a picture of water and it changes our state? What's going on there?
Yeah, on the surface level, there's the familiar. I want to go for a swim or a surf or a vacation, and there's sort of the advertising of the resort kind of. There's that sort of aspect. But if you go deeper and you look at it sort of from a deep evolutionary perspective, if you didn't position yourself correctly relative to water, whether you're a human, a fox, a squirrel, a mouse, if you weren't positioned correctly relative to a source of water, you were done in less than a week. So the survival mandate of being able to find water and, to sense it and to position yourself correctly relative to it safely, is probably the most important thing you need to be able to do if you want to stay alive.
I love it. Yeah. That's
very simple. Right?
And that's just the starting point, right?
Yeah. And that's just the starting point. So the fact that our brains tune into the sound and the sight of water in a way that says, yeah, man, that's right, that feels good, is no surprise. We better not ignore water. We better not or hear it and position ourselves correctly. So there's sort of a deep skill set that that all creatures need to have in one shape or form. Now, of course, there are animals that get most of their water from food, but even so, they need to position themselves correctly to well hydrated sources of food. So that's there's that sort of evolutionary mandate. Then you build on that, and you realize that the rhythmic sound of, say, the waves, if you're by the ocean, right? Let's think about music and rhythm. That's soothing. Rocking in a chair is soothing. Listening to a slow drum beat is puts you in a trance-like state. So listening to the waves in the ocean, looking at the reflection in the water, that may have been the earliest and first that humans encountered. So there's a self-reflection aspect to this, and so you start thinking back, like pre-advertising, travel, airline travel, pre-internet, pre-books. Water was really super cool and really important, and fun, still fun. And so just imagining, the earliest humans sort of in their need for and their sort of love of and respect for water, and then building kind of from there. And I think what my real interest is just to rekindle that conversation that, our healthy oceans, lakes, and rivers aren't just for the biodiversity, although that's important, and not just for the economic well-being of our communities, although that's important. Also, the emotional well-being, and that lakes, rivers, and oceans can provide literally the best moments of your entire life. The best hours of my life have been spent in water with my girls. And I say that and I could get really emotional real quick when I think about it. My dad, who died on Earth Day last year, my best times with him, hands down, were in the water with him.
Right.
Just those moments, learning to swim, learning to dive, doing all the cool stuff. Just hanging out, talking in the water, those are the best times. And so I'm really interested in just really talking about that with people and saying, let's make sure that we safeguard all of that, all those good feelings that make life worth living, and the ecological and economic benefits of these places as well. So that's kind of what drives me, and sort of led to writing the book. And right now, the book is just a door opener.
Right.
it's the beginning. The book is sort of precipitated this conversation.
Sure.
You, and it gets me, invited to different kinds of meetings. But really, what it's about is, okay, what are we going to do now? And it's a conversation starter. So,
and it's a damn fine one.
It's fun.
When you were talking about that, the emotion and those memories, I mean, it was just, it gives me chills, because I think many of us have these same sort of memories, and we easily, potentially, forget about them and lose that, just lose that sense of wonderment around water. I wanted to, and I know you wrote about this, just underscore one other thing relative to this natural affinity, and it's the super obvious one. We're 70% water, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
exactly.
And not only do we need it to survive, we are water.
Yeah.
I am water. You are water.
Yeah.
And then our minds are
even higher. Our brains are even more watery.
Right.
And I mean, we think about it. So, I remind people, your brain right now is mostly water, right. And it's floating around in some water in the dark. And so everything that you are perceiving right now while listening to this conversation, and what you're seeing around you, is actually it's all going down in the dark underwater.
And it is.
That's where it's happening. And so you get an interpretation, but that's all being interpreted in the dark underwater. And we all spent the first 9 months of our lives or so in the dark underwater. So the reality of human existence is dark water.
It's saline.
Yeah.
Saline.
Deep, dark, salty water. That's really what it's all
so I already could tell I could turn this into a 6-hour interview, but I'm not going to do that to you or the listener. So let's move on to the next. So that explains the natural affinity. It's survival. It is us, and there's a cause bigger than the book behind this to bring that awareness, start the conversation. Another interesting aspect I'd like you to talk about is creativity in water. Again, I feel like I could rattle off several theories. I talk about a few in my book, The Habit Factor, around creativity, and I know some of the I want to say the best passages, some of the big leaps or ideas came out of a surf session. Where I have a pad of paper in the car, I'm jotting down stuff on the beach or on my phone. So talk about what's going on there. In your blue mind, in our blue mind, as it relates to water and creativity.
Right. Well, let's start with your observation of your experience, and mine is very similar. That sometimes our best ideas come whether we're surfing or swimming or in the bath or the shower, and we're not alone. So lots of people would say the same thing. Even Oliver Sacks, the guy who tried to get to write Blue Mind,
right.
He was an avid swimmer. He said he got his best ideas in the water, and he would always try to jump out and jot them down on a yellow legal pad. And whether you're swimming in a lake or in a pool, you keep that pen and pad nearby, just like you jump in the car and go, okay, I got to record this before it slips away. So that's this is not an unusual story, and so. Why is the question? What's going on there? And part of it is, part of Blue Mind is by going to the water, what we're taking away. It's not necessarily all about what we're adding, although we're adding, water and sometimes wildlife and, an athletic experience. But it's also equally about what we remove. And we remove distractions. We remove screens. We remove extraneous noise and voices when we get out on the water. So your average relaxing dinner out at a restaurant at like a TGI Fridays, say it is Friday, and you're
Right.
like, hey, let's go chill at a restaurant. You go in and there's 15 different screens going, not to mention the one in your hand, and they're all playing a different event, sporting event or something. You got music playing, so you add to that. So you got 15 different stories on the screens. You got the buzz in your pocket from your phone. You got whoever's at your table, maybe 3 conversations going on if you're in a little group. You got the waiter trying to interject their life story. You got a menu full of 1,000 options. And this is relaxation. That is
it's stressing me out. And you got that ticker tape running across the bottom of the screen. Urgent update
add all of that
breaking news.
Yeah, you're paying for it.
Right.
This is your Friday night. This is your chill out Friday night after a long.
And that's why I don't go to Fridays.
Yeah. So that's, and so is there room for creativity? Hell no. There's no room there's barely room for a novel thought or, getting a creative word in edgewise. So when you go to the water, it's about removing, just each layer of that. So you get away from the screens, you get away from all the voices in the room, you get away from the few voices at the table, you get away from, the visual stimulus, you get away from the auditory stimulus, you get on the water, and you may even escape gravity if you're floating in the water.
Right.
So now your brain is doing a simple set of tasks. Auditorily, it's simplified. It's the sound of the water. There are no voices or music or anything being interpreted. Visually, you're not reading a screen. You're not looking at a face and trying to understand an emotion. It's visually simplified. And then somatically, from your body's perspective, you're getting some relief. You're not balancing. You may just be floating or swimming along. And so it opens up some bandwidth. And our brains don't waste bandwidth. They jump in there and they do different things. So you can occupy that bandwidth with 1,000 distractive things, or you can open it up and let your brain go to work and be creative and be insightful and innovative and start smashing things together in your subconscious and then occasionally letting them pop out into your conscious mind. And those are those aha moments. Those are those lyrics or lines of poetry where you're going, I got to write this thing down. Where did that come from?
Right. Wow.
It feels like it fell out of the sky and landed in your brain. I know, some musicians say, I wrote this song and it came to me almost intact.
Right. Like perfect, note perfect.
Yeah. And so poetry or an idea for your book or just, that's how it works. But when you're super distracted, that doesn't really work as well. And so water gives you, there are ways to get your blue mind on without going out on the water, but water is the perfect excuse. And it's a great context. And it puts us into that state, that mildly meditative, creative state of mind.
That's beautiful. All right, a quick timeout. Again, thank you so much for joining me in Habits to Goals. I hope you are digging this interview. I want to share with you something pretty cool we just thrown out there. You can catch this either live or recorded. It's a webinar I put on. It's about 60 minutes. It goes through 9 major tips. It gives you background about the habit factor, a little bit about me, and an overview and intro to something we have put together called the 28-Day Breakthrough. Fantastic course. Really, the goal of which is, it's the old, you don't feed a man a fish or woman, you teach them to fish. And so this is built above, beneath, around the habit factor, really gets in depth with mission, vision, values, some great modules around goals in particular, energy, the mastery mindset. Those are modules that are included. Anyways, check it out. All you have to do is go to thehabitfactor.com/28. That's the number 28 day, D-A-Y, webinar. That's thehabitfactor.com/28-day webinar. You can get the info, sign up, and hopefully we'll see you on the inside. And with that, let's get back to this fantastic interview. Cheers. And that parallels much of my take is, and it parallels this exactly. It just, creativity is the subconscious. This is why it fits in the habit factor book is, we know our habits kind of reside, definition of habit, and one of them is that it's an act, it's performed basically without conscious thought. And so when you look at creativity, these leaps in creativity, they're largely when our brain goes out of conscious mode to relaxation or subconscious mode. And it's at that point, you're shaving, you're surfing, you're detached. But I love the way you described, and it reminds me of, there's this old Zen parable. You probably heard it, with the master and the student, and before he pours him tea, he empties out his cup. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know that one? I think he actually pours it until it's overflowing, and then he says something like to the master, what are you doing? It's spilling everywhere. And he says, you see, I cannot add to your cup when it is already full. So you just nailed it by emptying our cup. We have this opportunity for incredible creativity. It's fantastic.
That's right.
Empty the cup.
Yeah. And our society is always giving us more and more and more and more ways to be not empty the cup. And it's considered good to do that. It's good to be busy and multitask and have way too much going on.
It's the worst thing ever. This explains why I don't go out. And I sit in a dark room.
It's good to have an outlet for, and that's one of the lessons is, you find your way to get your blue mind on. If it's just really making the space and disconnecting the phone and logging out and closing the shades, getting in the bathtub, going for a surf, going for a float session, going for a hike in the woods.
Silence.
Yeah. Find that and then be ready, be ready for cool ideas and insights and sometimes hard, tricky stuff,
exactly. The insights that you may not like. So, that reminds me, I think it was Blaise Pascal. He said something like, all men's miseries derive from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Yeah, exactly.
So
when I proposed to my wife and, we sort of decided that's what we were going to do, we discussed, that we would be guardians of each other's solitude. As Rainer Rilke wrote, that's what one of your partner's tasks and jobs and responsibilities is to guard your solitude and not take it personally when you seek it. And I think that's a beautiful idea to have, the people you love recognize that your alone time is super important.
That is cool. Yeah, I don't know if we articulated it, but fortunately for me, 17, 18, something odd years into marriage, wifey has figured that one out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I mean, like I said, this is just, I'm not even scratching my notes. So I'm going to jump over health and just go straight into this idea of happiness and blue mind and water. Because we just talked about creativity, but there's a significant role. You touched on it in the open, but specifically talk maybe about the science or the two types of happiness or just a little bit about what your research tells people as it relates to happiness and blue mind or water. Yeah.
So, happiness is it's a word that's thrown around a lot.
Right.
And when I talk about happiness, I'm probably more accurately referring to contentment and just a sense of wellness and that all is good, in that moment. Now, of course, that doesn't mean all is good in the universe, all is good in the world, or even all is good in your life, but finding those moments where you are content with your place, it's important, right? And to be able to pursue that and actually occasionally experience it, a peace of mind and a sense of self-worth and, purpose and direction, and all that kind of gets wrapped into happiness. I think one of the key things that I've learned since writing Blue Mind and sharing it is, there are a lot of groups that are using surf therapy, scuba therapy, boating therapy, fishing therapy, you name it, aquatic therapy to help people be happier. And it works really well. But it works a lot better when it's paired up with a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. And when the happiness isn't just about me, but it's about we. And when I recognize that my happiness is dependent on your happiness and the well-being of the water that I am floating in, boating on, surfing in, that becomes my purpose, my service. And so, in the groups that I've worked with that do surf therapy for sometimes veterans with post-traumatic stress, or first responders dealing with post-traumatic stress, the programs that work the best are not the ones that give people a week of happiness and then send them back home and they wish they were surfing, but they're in the middle of hot Texas and there are no waves. Yeah. and now their low is lower than their previous low. That's no good. It's the programs that create a sense of connection and purpose and service. And so I use the veteran example, but our people who serve, whether it's in the military or as police, fire, rescue, they're taught to serve. There's a service mentality, and when that is gone, there's a void. And there may be post-traumatic stress and psychological issues to deal with, of course. But what's also missing is that service. And so that is part of what gives us happiness. It isn't just being relaxed and feeling good in a wave. It's also being relaxed, feeling good, and knowing that you are going to teach somebody else to surf the way you learn to surf, or you're going to fight to make sure that wave is clean and healthy. And that's going to be your service. You're going to do a beach cleanup. You're going to make sure there's no more pollution going into that wave, and you're going to be an instructor. And that's, you can start to feel, that combination of that personal experience and the service experience, creating real happiness and contentment. So that's kind of where I like to see, the Blue Mind message go. It isn't just like, hey, get blissed out, and be super creative and write another song. It's the service that comes as an extension of that. And our lakes, rivers, and oceans need all the help they can get. So there's a never-ending need for people who want to plug into that work.
Well, I love the distinction you made, and I just was reminded of it right as you said it. So, I don't know, 18 months back or something, I did a webinar on happiness, and I spoke for a period of time on the distinction, at least in my mind. People get caught up in, the vernacular, but in my mind, there's contentment and then there's happiness. And the analogy, though, I used, which I think you're going to love, is imagine a lake that's, 2 miles deep. So if you draw a line 90%, 80% up from the bottom, down, whatever, a mile deep, that's stillness. That's contentment. Yeah. At the top of the water, there may be storms, there may be waves. That's the day-to-day fluctuation of happiness. Mm-hmm. But the contentment is down deep, and it doesn't waver much or at all. So I love that you drew that distinction. And the other thing that kind of overlaps with some of the stuff we're doing on this end with the Habits to Goals podcast. We just released Passion and Purpose, and this little exercise matrix that helps people find, helps guide them towards their purpose, or at least puts them in some direction. So that is helpful. So awesome. All right. I can't believe the time is flying by. This is unbelievable. All right, so I'm just going to jump into a few of my patented questions here. I just wrote it this way. As a creative and a thought leader, just like everybody else, I'm guessing you have bad and tough days. I think I actually know some of the answer without just intuiting it. How do you battle through tough days, Jay?
Yeah, I think you're right on. It's like it's not all happy contentment 24/7, and I lean on the ocean for sure. I fall asleep listening. I'm lucky enough to be able to hear it from my bed.
That's awesome.
And I don't miss a second of enjoying it. And when I'm in just the end of the day, and it really does pull a lot of the worries away and just allows for some good sleep. And I recognize that's pretty lucky to be able to hear the ocean from my where I sleep. I know when things are rough with my kids, and as dad of 2 teen girls, it happens. We go to the beach, and they know exactly what I'm up to, and they'll say, "Dad, are you doing that blue mind thing on us?" I say, "Hell yes," and I'm glad you recognize it. But when things are feeling red mind and conflicted, we just take a walk down to the water, and it doesn't solve all the problems, but it definitely gets us talking, and that's one of those nudges, those little reminders. Just do that. If you find yourself at work or at home in a jam with another, somebody you work with or live with, take the whole conversation on the road, take a walk out the door. Just say, come on, let's talk and walk.
Nice.
And it's just one of those life hack tricks that works. Just trust me on it. And the ideas will flow. This change of scenery will help. If you get lucky enough to walk next to a river or lake or an ocean, that'll even help more. But just being in motion outside is good. Oxygen flow to the brain, and
fresh air.
It's so easy to forget,
right.
Especially in the workplace. People just get tense, but it's just So those are just some thoughts. I mean, when I lost my dad, I went into a funk on that, and it was just very disorienting, and just not being able to call him up, and I had to lean on family and spend more ocean time, just processing that. The ocean's a great place to mourn and grieve any kind of loss. Water in general, whether it's a bath, lake, river, ocean. Take your sadness there. It's a good outlet. It's another simple reminder. When you get to those points in your life, full of grief, just don't carry it around. Let it soak it out.
Yeah. Well, condolences about your father. I do find repeatedly, fortunate enough to live down by the water here in San Diego, but I will almost always, when something, God forbid, somebody passes, I go straight to a sunset, wow.
Well, there's a reason why we tend to, if you're on the coast, if a surfer friend passes, there's a paddle out. That's right. Where or people like to have their ashes scattered over the waves or on a river or thrown across, a natural area. So we do tend to move towards awe and beautiful places when when we need solace. And the best, I think, is being by the water. But that's what we humans seek out when we're feeling that way.
I think it's the pull of the infinite loop, the idea that we came from the water and we're going back to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
the humility that comes with it. And,
yeah.
In those times of loss, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of disorientation, and something about the humility and the awe that definitely is helpful. Yeah.
All right. Here's another standard question. How do you define success?
I don't.
That's okay.
I just keep going and keep moving towards sort of this sort of elusive future that never arrives. And I think that's one of the things you learn as you get older is that what you thought would be your sort of definition of success. Like if only I could get that grant for that project, then I would be a success. If only I could get my degree, my PhD, then that would be. But then you realize when that happens, it's just the beginning of the next long path.
Right.
I think I was not planning on writing a bestseller. That was not the goal. I was just wanting to get this book out.
Right.
But it became a bestseller, and that's an accolade. But then you realize that only brings more responsibility. Like the next question, the day that it hits the bestseller list, is what's your next book about?
Oh, you're talking. Yep.
you don't get. It's not like the fireworks go off and the rainbow appears and there's a pot of gold. It's just like it's kind of never ending. So.
Fair enough. I love the answer. It's the journey. It's not this destination.
Yeah.
It's not an accomplishment. It's not an accolade. It is the journey itself.
Yeah. I have to say I'm going to contradict myself slightly, but someday when I'm a grandpa or a great grandpa, I'd like to be hanging out in Baja with some of the old fishermen that I've worked with for years.
No.
with our grandkids, looking at the ocean and seeing some turtles swimming around and just saying, we worked hard to make sure these animals didn't go extinct. And I look around, nobody will even know that we had any role, or our grandkids won't even know, but we'll just clink our beers and just that's the payday right there.
That's awesome. Well, now you've opened the window for me. I wasn't going to do this. Every once in a while I reiterate what mine is that's creating your ideal future. So it allows for the constant evolution and the change. And sometimes it's the thing you want and then you don't get it anyways. But since you mentioned that kind of ideal future, I thought that was the window I needed to share that. Creating your ideal future. All right. Talk about, and I think I know some of these, 2 or 3 of your best habits.
Yeah. So start the day with a couple big glasses of water. So kind of, for all kinds of reasons, but one of them is obviously hydration and health, but also it's just a routine that reminds me, like, yet another day to work for my top number 1 client, which is water. And it's just a reminder, start of the day, and try to also end the day that way with a nice glass of water. And then there's all the in between stuff. I'm not, I guess I wouldn't say I'm a creature of habit so much, although I try to be, I try to have a handful of healthy habits that I stick to, and then, like I'm going to swim every day. I'm going to try to surf every day. I'm going to row every day, get in those kind of habits, a burst of them, and then it won't happen for a while. And then, And then there's the writing, the writing stuff when I'm on sort of deadline and I got kind of like a daily word goal.
Nice.
Then that's a habit, is just to, sit down and turn everything off and just reach that, whether it's 1,000 words or 2,000 words writing goal. I think, there's a lot of great writers talk about their writing habits. And I think, first and foremost, what you hear is just write. Like, you're not going to be a writer unless you actually write words. You can't think about it and imagine it and dream about it. You actually have to string words together into something, even if it's a mess. And just keep doing.
Excuse me.
Keep doing it. So that's a habit when I'm in that mode. Whether it's a book, an article. It's just kind of a writing goal for the day. Yeah.
How about one habit, and you don't have to, this is always optional, one habit you're trying to break, a not so good habit?
It kind of vacillates between sort of like the caffeine coffee habit. And then I'll read an article that says caffeine's good for you. And I'll be like, right on, I'm cool. And then I'll decide that I'm over it, and then I'll switch off, do green tea for, a while, and then eventually that switches back. Those are, I think that's probably the one that sort of keeps coming up.
That's super funny. Yeah. Just the other day, some study said something like 3 cups a day, you're going to live longer.
Right.
I'm like, 3 cups a day, I would be bouncing off the walls.
Right. Yeah, I read those studies. I'm like, Yahoo, I'm good. And then you read something and you're like, wait a second. I switched back to green tea for a while. But I'm lucky to my tendency is not to get stuck in too many bad habits. I know I have family members and friends that have a harder time with destructive habits, and I understand the physiology of that as well. So in that conversation, one thing I learned from our neuroscience colleagues is that the tendency to become addicted to different kinds of habits, particularly destructive ones, is common and powerful. But if you can harness that dopamine addiction as a force for good, so if you can get a dopamine hit by helping people, or every time you teach a new person to surf, or you clean up the beach, or you do just a good deed, you feel like you get a hit.
Nice.
That's sort of harnessing that dopamine loop and making it as a force for good. And I think that's a powerful idea, is if we can have many positive, regenerative habits and addictions that are rebuilding and helping people and feel good and give you that dopamine high. Wow, imagine that. Like, people addicted to helping each other. That would be super cool. Yeah,
that's fantastic. I'm going to use that as an excuse to talk about this. So one of the things we talk about with the habit factor is the process to develop habit is following something called PAR, plan, act, record, and reassess. The intrinsic value, the self-efficacy that comes with recording is unbelievable. Tracking, like, first of all, the planning. If you just say, I'm saying not you necessarily, but anybody out there listening, if you just say, you use this process, you say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to walk 1 mile, and you check that off, you actually do it, you get that dopamine hit. It's this intrinsic reward, and the tracking is what reinforces it. So I'm using your lead there just to reinforce for people that following that process absolutely works. Plan, act, record, and reassess. And they know.
Yeah, that's really good.
So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. All right. I hate to do it. We're getting near a close. You have been absolutely brilliant. Favorite books a transformative book, 1, 2, or 3. Take your pick. I'm sure.
Yeah, big one. The big one that if I was stuck on an island with nothing but one, I would take Shakespeare's complete works.
Wow,
just brilliant, difficult, challenging, universal. Never ever fails to entertain and challenge. My next book borrows a bit from Shakespeare's Seven Ages of Man, which is a passage from As You Like It, where it begins, all the world's a stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's that famous passage, and then he kind of walks through the 7 ages of human life. And so I borrow that structure with credit for what I call the 7 ages of water. And I'll through how our lives can be seen through the lens of water. And so I love Shakespeare. On a complete other end of the spectrum in terms of length would be one of Jim Harrison's last writings. He's a great writer that I really enjoy. He wrote a novella called The River Swimmer that is excellent. And it's a novella, so it's brief. So, if you get into it, it's a one-night read. Highly recommend it. It's in a collection of 2 novellas, but the collection is called The River Swimmer as well, and I just love it. So if you're looking for a really good, provocative, water-related fiction, I recommend anything by Jim Harrison, but The River Swimmer is that lights me out. I love it.
That's awesome. I got it. Sorry. Sorry to cut you off. I have it written down. We'll add show notes for the listener. How about this? I know it's a bit of a dichotomy. You probably love-hate relationship, I'm guessing, with technology. A favorite tech tool, app, website, something you probably could do without, but you can't do without.
Let's see. I think the voice memo app on my iPhone is
that's awesome. I use that all the time.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver for the reasons where we started.
Right. Get
an idea and you're just like, I can't type it, I can't write it, but I don't want to lose it, and I'll just hit that and I'll record. I think it's often underutilized just as a productivity tool, and it's on everybody's iPhone and probably on your Android or whatever other kind of phone you have. You got a version of it. So, and sometimes I'll record little songs. I'll play my guitar and record a song and send it off, or just save it, or record a song with my kids.
That's awesome.
And one of the great, I underutilized again, but sitting down with a friend or a loved one or somebody who's not going to be much longer on this planet, and just do what we're doing, and just hit record and record an intimate conversation, and you'll be glad you did. I did that with my dad near the end there, and I haven't had the heart to really go back and listen to it, but I know I will at some point. And that tool is right there in your pocket. So, use it. And something about audio without visual is, I don't know, there's some depth to it. Just listening, with the headset and your eyes closed to someone speaking like people are doing right now. There's something extra. It's not, the lack of visual doesn't diminish. In fact, it probably enhances the conversation in some ways. So, that's I love it. That app right there. Simple.
I love it. Jay, you have been just an incredible guest, super thoughtful. This has been enlightening, educational, entertaining. Before we sign off, is there anything, I don't know if you're still doing the Blue Mind Summits or you have another event possibly. Again, we'll hang a few links up, but if there's anything to promote that's not entirely time sensitive, as again, this may not even roll out till Q1 2018. Anywhere you want a listener to go, or, a website, just feel free to share it now.
Yeah, I'd say we do an annual Blue Mind Summit, and this 2018 it will be Blue Mind 8 in Miami, and 2019 and so on. So whenever people, if people are listening to this podcast in 100 years, we'll probably still be doing Blue Mind Summits. So you're welcome to come to Blue Mind 108 in 100 years. That was a joke, but
well, so you said it's in Miami. What time of year?
June. It's coming up.
Okay.
June 2018, June 8th. So June 8th in Miami, and
6/8/18.
Yeah, and so we, people can join us, or we always live stream it. Tune in via the live stream. And then the other project we're working on this coming year is creating a sort of an online Blue Mind series of interviews. That'll be, lightly edited interviews with different people along the way. And so, sort of like a podcast. I'll say it. I used to say Charlie Rose style. I don't say that anymore, but,
oh man.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Dropping like flies, buddy.
Yeah. So, Rachel Maddow style, or I don't know what the best replacement of that phrase is, but
right.
Some kind of interview style that pulls, kind of like we're doing here all around water. So we'll have that series rolling out in 2018 as well, so people can watch for that. But there's lots of ways to connect and get involved, and I'm pretty responsive if people have insights and want to connect. Just reach out and find the link here on the website of this podcast, and you'll find me.
I will connect with you. I will get all the links. Sounds like a really cool experience, these summits, and you have been, again, brilliant, very entertaining. You just killed it. So thank you so much for doing this, Jay.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. Let's circle back another time.
Yep. We will be chatting, and good luck with the teenage daughters there, buddy.
Likewise.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah. Take it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from. If there's one thing I know, and I think Jim Rohn was the one who said this originally, in 5 years, the difference in your life will be largely based upon two things: the books you've read and the relationships you have fostered. Doesn't it make sense to take advantage of the downtime, whether you're on the road, on a run, in the gym, kill a couple birds with one stone, get a book going? It's phenomenal. The more people I turn on to it, the more compliments I get. Not that I've actually done anything. 180,000 titles to choose from. You get one free book a month, 30% off any other book. Again, check it out. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. I'm going to say that again real quick. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. And that is the number 2. And of course, when you support our sponsors, you are supporting the show. So thank you again. I am extremely grateful. We'll see you at the next episode.